I'm Ken Rockwell, known to most people as kenrockwell.com, and I was lucky enough, I had no idea, but one of the neighbors in my neighborhood is the world famous photographer and iconic photographer, Harry Langdon.
Hi everybody, I'm Harry Langdon, and I'm a photographer that's been photographing pretty much people for around 60 years, and I enjoy talking about my experiences and the technical facets to photography, and so that's why I'm here with Ken today, because he's an expert on the technology of photography, and so we're going to have a great conversation.
Well, yes, I'm here today because I hadn't realized that when we think of the 1980s and many of the stars from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even up through today, that many of the times the images of which you're thinking in your head is an icon that Harry created. And I'm just overwhelmed meeting such an incredible photographer, and I'm hoping maybe, Harry, you can show us a little bit of what you shot so people understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to start with some people that I'm sure that everybody knows, that Ronald and Nancy Reagan. I photographed his official pictures when he first became president. And Robin Williams was a wonderful client of mine. We had a lot of fun together. And so these are challenging people. There's time enters into photographing these people. Obviously, the president only allowed us about 2 hours to do the session. Here's another one that most of you know is Donna. We'd photographed at least 7 of her album covers, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and it was exciting, and I was very honored to be able to photograph her. There's Diana Ross, who many of you know, and who is still performing. And I photographed her on and off for a period of around 20 years. It's another shot of her. Oh, here's a shot of Diana Ross and myself. I try to get in a picture if I can. Here's another one of our all-time favorites, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was quite very challenging because he's a very imposing Austrian man with a thick accent, smoked cigars a lot. And so I first started photographing him for a magazine called Muscle and Fitness, and that's how we met, and we went on doing his other pictures. After that, here's another one that's may date me a little bit, but this is Angelina Jolie. I first started photographing her when she was 16 years old, and she was very professional, though. Even at her age, she conducted herself really well on the session, and Angelina is a wonderful subject to photograph. Self-motivated, by the way. I didn't hardly have to tell her what to do. She just did it. I just told her turn left, turn right. By the way, here's a shot of me in my studio, one shot in the studio. I use modern day technology, by the way. I don't use film like I used to. And here's another one of our old friend, George Clooney. And so George and I have done a few sessions together. And so this is an excerpt from a book that I did about Harry Langdon's Hollywood. And so that's kind of an introduction to photography. I've mostly photographed people all my life. I have photographed a lot of products and ships and teapots and things like that, which is also very challenging, and I enjoy doing still lifes. So that kind of gives you a glimpse into what I've done, and I'm still doing pictures, by the way. I still enjoy going on location, and I get a kick out. The new digital technology has given me a new inspiration in my work, and I look forward to sessions very readily.
The nice thing is having Harry as my neighbor now. I expect us to be doing a bunch more interviews talking about how his technique works, how he ran his business, how he got such famous clients. Today is really my first time getting to meet him. I'm wondering, it might be good just for this initial video, maybe just tell us a little bit about what got you excited about photography and just to start photography in the first place.
Well, when I was a kid, Okay, my dad died when I was 10 years old. Okay, so unexpectedly, and so I was left without a father. Although Boy Scouts was a big feature in my life, my parents got me involved in Boy Scouts, okay? In Boy Scouts, they had these things where you get merit badges, you know, for certain things, and building crystal sets and, you know, woodworking techniques. And one of them was chemistry sets. It used to have something called a chemistry set. And all by myself, as an 11, 12-year-old, I could sit in my bedroom and do these experiments with different chemicals and see them boil and bubble and change color. And so later on, I studied art, also painting and drawing watercolor and so on. But my mother thought, gee, what are we going to do with him? Maybe something he can get a handle on for a career, a future career. And so she bought me something called a dark room, a black and white dark room set. And this was right up my alley because it involved chemistry, and, you know, I could do all by myself, and I could make these creations, these beautiful pictures of prints, and I could show people what I did, which I think is a real important thing for the youth today. I think is create things that you can show your relatives and maybe show them 10 years later. And so much is just digitally done now, but photographs and making pictures and making prints is something that will last forever. So the realm of creativity has been something I've been doing all of my life. And so there's interesting features about creativity, and when one starts getting paid to be creative, that's when the rubber meets the road, you become a professional. First time one of my friends said, you know, I see you really photograph cars really well. How about taking a picture of me for my agent? And I said, oh, okay. So I took a picture of this fellow's name, Brad Weston. And I just followed all the things I've learned about using a camera, took a picture of him, and he took the pictures and showed his agent. Boom. From that moment on, I became a professional in that Brad said, I'm going to pay you now for these pictures. And I went, oh, come on, you don't need to pay me. You know, it was fun. And they said, I want to pay you. So I always remember I charged them $300, which is not very much compared to what our fees are now. And so from that moment on, those pictures started me on a roll where the agency that this man belonged to had something like 80 or 100 models in the agency. And so the agent in this agency proceeded to send every one of her models in to me to have pictures made. Now, honestly, between you and I didn't really know that much how to work with beautiful people and work with multiple people, working under time restrictions. You know, they give you, well, I've got 15 minutes to do this photo, and I go, oh no. And so, but that got me onto a roll, and so, and from that moment on, then gradually famous personalities started coming in. One of my first one was actually Diane Ross was one of my well-known clients, and Dionne Warwick, and it just started multiplying as quantum leaps. Before I knew it, I had a studio with 4 walls in a controlled environment where I could play music if I wanted to and inspire the subjects, and that's all part of it, by the way. And so I went on doing photography, and that brings us up to date.
Mm-hmm.
And so the personalities became more and more famous, and more importance, and more money was involved. And so one has to adjust to those kind of, not restrictions, but those parameters where you're getting paid a lot of money, not $300 anymore, maybe $3,000, $30,000 you're getting paid to do a photo session. But really, one still has to be creative no matter how much you're getting paid. And so that creativity factor is one you begin processing in our little minds, you know, as my Boy Scout days. were a big help to me, making a better shoebox. Now it's making a better photograph.
Was the magic leap of faith that happened is one of the people you photographed in the earliest days for $300 just happened to be friends with and show his pictures around to these famous musicians of the time, and that's what brought them in, was your talent and the first bunch of photographs. Is that what worked?
Yeah, it's automatic if you're generating pictures that satisfy the needs of the subject. They'll tell friends, and then those friends will tell other people, and it jumps in quantum leaps. As long as you're consistent, you can't make any mistakes. If you make one mistake, maybe, I don't know, maybe the dressing room may not be clean, or the music is too loud, or maybe some other, personal problems, So, but as long as one is on course, creativity, but people will always search you out when you're doing creative things, it's inspired, and it maybe it's fresh and new. That's what I always tried to do, is keep my work fresh and new, because a lot of these people I just talked about, I photographed over and over, maybe once a year, and maybe once every 2 months. And that was a challenge, because then I had to keep coming up with something I didn't do last time. And the last time I thought that I did my very best. And now this time they said, okay, we really like the pictures from your last shooting session, but let's do some that are even more interesting and better. And so that was a real challenge. So I'd have to really tap into my intuition and creativity, and so it was an interesting process of creativity. Is something that a lot of people aren't too familiar with, the creative process, especially when you're getting paid to be creative. It doesn't make it easier, you just have to be creative. In fact, sometimes I give photo sessions away to people because I maybe admire them, I like what they're doing, and so I do it with no money involved. And then you have to be really creative to kind of satisfy the subject. So the whole topic of creativity is a very interesting one to me. I don't know if we have time today talking about it, but I study the old masters, Leonardo da Vinci, and a lot of the artists, and Mark Rothko. A lot of them I've gotten inspiration from, and they're using colors, how they use their colors in their paintings. By the way, I did go to art school, and I went to art school and learned about complementary colors, harmonious colors, and so those are basic requirements. And so now when I do a photo session, it's just automatic for me to rely on those things I learned in art school and growing up, and what's harmonious and what isn't.
Tell us about being creative while you're being paid to be creative. I know most of us, these people who watch my stuff, do photography because they love it. But when someone's paying you, how often was there a problem, or was there ever a problem with the person paying you telling you what to do? In other words, they were being the creative one, wanting it done their way.
Of course. Mm-hmm. This is a situation I recently ran into with a recording artist. And I don't know if I should mention her name, but quite often the subject that's paying me to be creative has their own ideas of how they should look. They photographed on this side or that side, or full length, or the background color, and the kind of clothes they wear. Now, I have my own built-in inspired ideas that I think would be best for this particular subject, but they may clash with what the subject wants me to do. And so I have to be very diplomatic. And for instance, a picture I showed of George Clooney was one where he wasn't real thrilled about putting on a white suit and me climbing up a ladder. So I had to keep saying, George, look, don't worry about it. Just trust me, okay? Trust me is a magic word. Give me 10 more minutes, and the photo session will be over, and you can go home, get back on your motorcycle. Everything will be great. So that technique I have to use is when I confide in my subjects. I hate to use the word sub, but that's what they are, my clients, and confide with them that you came to me because of the knowledge and ingenuity and inspiration that I have. And so this is a secret a key word. I like your ideas, and let's just start out and do some things that you had in mind. Standing on your head, no problem. Turning your back to the camera, okay, that's all right. And I said, but toward the end of the shooting, let me do what I like to do. And so I have to use all that kind of psychology with people and not offend anybody. And so the object is to get through a shooting session where you can exercise your inspired creativity and satisfy not just the subject, by the way. Quite often there's somebody else that needs the pictures. A magazine, a record company, their husband, their mother or their grandmother. And so all those people need to be satisfied. And quite often those people's opinion of the subject person may be different than what their mother thinks of their little Johnny or the little Arnold or something, may be different. So there's a whole plethora of a crowd of people besides the subject that I have to please. The record company, by the way, is important. The record company is, we want to sell this person's records, and we want the public to grab their album cover out of the package, I want to buy their cover. And so those are things that are kind of challenging. It may not be what the subject in that album cover wanted to do, but it may be what the record company wanted, or the magazine cover, by the way. Magazines are difficult to work with because there's certain, again, restrictions. They like the subject pointed toward the right of the frame, which is kind of against what I feel is the proper way to look at it. And so the right of the frame, and there's a certain amount of space above the head that you have to gain so they can put the caption up here. There's a resolution. Okay, I could go on and on. The restrictions of magazine photography has on, they don't want to offend anybody. Certain colors may offend somebody, certain stances. Okay, so I've been through all of that, and it's kind of get a kick. Nothing surprises me much anymore. Angelina Jolie, by the way, it's a typical one. Her father brought her in for this photo. And I go to a 16-year-old girl, okay, and it's going to be to get her parts in movies. Her dad is a famous actor, and John Voight, by the way. So he was famous in his own right. So he had a lot of power in Hollywood and everything, okay. And so then he brings his little daughter, and his daughter, this little skinny woman, and she's a good stature and a good figure. So I never know quite what to expect when a teenager walks in. Some teenagers are real powerful. They've so much TV and so much on their cell phone and all that. So I went in and so introduced myself to Angelina and told, so on and so forth, and stood her out in front of the camera. And from that moment on, I could tell that she was taking charge. Now that's the trick, is to get the subject in a picture to sort of take charge and use their own initiative on posing and smiling. And a lot of people stand in front of the camera totally deadpan and stand there just like a scarecrow, and they'll say, "Make me smile." I go, "Oh God, are you kidding?" These are people making somebody who's really famous wants me to make them smile. But anyway, Angelina was fabulous at posing and smiling whenever I wanted, hairstyles, and the session was a wonderful success. And her pictures still today, I see them in magazines after, 40 years I did the session. And so that's a challenging. Now here's, conversely, I photographed people like Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. Now we are having a president of the United States walk in the door, and again, the clock is ticking from the moment they walk in the door, and they come in, and then they, of course, there's a tremendous amount of security that comes with them. First of all, the security is watching me. They're watching my assistants. They're watching every other. Okay, so that's a little unnerving. You're this creative dude. Wants to be a photographer, just like the old days, 50 years ago, and just shoot my head off. But no. So then there was a publicist that came over to me that was the White House head of publicity for the White House. And they take me aside. At the meantime, Ronald Reagan sitting in the middle of the studio reading the Hollywood Reporter. And so this publicist came over and they said, "Now, Mr. Langdon, we want you to tell the president how you want him to pose in front of the camera, his expressions, his whole mood and demeanor. So you tell him what you want now." And I'm going, "Are you kidding?" I don't want to say that. And the ball was now in my court. And so I had to immediately take charge. And of course, Ronald was sitting there. I remember always sitting in a director's chair with his feet up on a stool. He was an actor. People that were actors, it's real easy to program them, so to speak. So I said, "Ronald, now look, I see you this way, and we're going to photograph you as the head of a country. You're now the charge of the United States. Okay? But besides that, we'd like to have you have like a grandfatherly aura about you. Like if we were your grandchildren, could we come up and ask you for advice?" Okay? And so he got it. And now most actors, he's a very professional man. He got it, what I wanted. And then it was just a matter of just pointing the camera at him and making sure it was framed right and getting the contrast. I was shooting film in those days, so nowadays we're photographing people digitally, which is just a godsend. It's just an act of God that digital came out, because immediately we can see exactly what we're getting. We don't have to wait for Polaroids like we used to have to use before we did a shot. So now we're shooting digitally, and it's just made it so much more pleasant to do a photo session. And so the session came out really well, by the way, on Ronald Reagan. Then there's other people that I'll get into maybe on another episode, you know. So right now I'm using digital cameras, where I used to use film cameras, and it's just a huge leap in technology that's allowed me to become even more creative. Because when you're a creative person, if you're bogged down, worried about f-stops and the speed of the film and when the lab's going to get it done, it's better to free your mind when you're being a creative person so that you can focus on the subject at hand. So
that's what I try to tell everyone, but no one listens to me, which is the camera's job is to just get out of the way. The best camera just gets out of your way so you can think about what you want the picture to look like and your subject and just get it. And if you have to stop and fiddle with the camera, then it just broke your train of thought. So getting out of the way is the best thing a camera can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of my clients, and I already know ahead of time, they have a certain emotional thing where they come in for a photo session with an angry attitude. They're being forced to do a photo session, and they are not happy with them being there, happy with me. They look at me as the enemy. Can you believe that?
Oh, you're part of that. It's like, you're the reason I'm not doing something I'd rather do. I have to go to the dentist. I have to go to the photographer.
And the camera is supposed to be, they look at it as the enemy. And so I have to then, I hate to use the word con them, but I have to coerce them. No, that's the right word, coerce. I have to convince them that we're all doing this for their careers and to make their mommy and daddy happy, make the magazine happy and the record company happy, and this is all part of it. So we have to make friends as fast as possible. Now, quite often I'm older than the subject matter, and unfortunately, more nowadays, I'm older than everybody. And so they have a lot of respect for me when I go in and start giving them advice and figure that I know what I'm doing. But to take a person that is under duress is an interesting word. They're being forced to do a photo session. That is not easy. So, and I can see it the moment they sit down or get in front of the camera that they're unhappy being there. This has happened with a subject of mine that has passed on. His name Richard Burton. A lot of young people don't know who Richard Burton is. Okay, Richard Burton is a very famous stage actor from the English theater stage, and he played Caesar and Cleopatra. Very famous actor. And we were doing the pictures that were going to be used for publicity for his new upcoming stage performance. So he was going to Camelot. I think he was going to play the King of England, I guess it was. And I had, this is really left field. I had to go out to the Western costume place in Hollywood and acquire costumes that a king would wear. Not just a regular king, but this medieval king. I had to get crowns and swords and chain mail and all of that. Now, I couldn't rely on my assistant. Who do you call and say, hey, go out and get the armor for a medieval king, and hope it comes out. Okay, so I got all this out, and so I had this all ready for Richard. Okay, the day came for the photo session, and Richard was just like an angry animal when he walked in the studio. Oh, he was so livid to be there. Livid is a good word, huh?
Livid is a good word if it's appropriate. I wish that he wouldn't be, though.
And the two men that were producing the play, New York stage play, were there to the first meeting with Richard. So Richard, the first thing I heard at the door was somebody not just knocking on our front door, but kicking our front door. It was, you can tell the difference between kicking and knocking, okay? And so we let in, and Richard, so the first thing I had to do, which always has to happen, I had to become friends with Richard as fast as possible before he could do any damage, physical damage, or damage to the men that are paying for the photo session. Okay, so Richard walked in, and I said, he's Harry Langdon. And so I don't want to quote the words, there some 4-letter words that he was expressing the reason he didn't want to be there. Okay, so I said, Richard, but you're here. Okay, get your makeup on. So I got him out there, and then what I usually do in the studio is for all clients, by the way, for their convenience, I put a mark on the floor. It's a very primitive psychology. It is just old school, but I take some masking tape and I mark a square on the floor of my studio and say, here, stand in that square. Okay, usually most people will obey that. Okay, and then where's the camera going to be? The camera's going to be over here. Okay, so Richard said, okay, he demanded, get behind the camera and just get ready to do the photo session. So I did that. So I got up behind, I was using electric Hasselblad at that time, it has a little electric button where you can advance the film, click the picture, advance. And so the thing with theater people like this, they feel like they're performing. The camera is an audience of perhaps 10,000 people out there, okay, in a big theater. They're prepared for a big audience. It's not just a little still picture, okay. And so I had to be prepared, and so I said, okay, Richard, okay, go. And he said, are you ready? I said, yes. A magic word, yes, I'm ready to go. And so what he did as an exercise, he grabbed a chapter out of the Bible, the Christian Bible, and he began reciting verses from a chapter called Revelations. Now, some of you out there may know what Revelations is.
I know what it is.
It's so extreme, and he was actually speaking, almost yelling the words. Okay, now I got the shots within about 20 frames, but he was still going. Oh no, how am I going to wrap it up and tell him to stop? Because by telling a person to stop, You're liable to get them aroused and with more anger. So anyway, I finally wrapped up the shaving. Oh, but after that, we became friends. He became friends with the people in the room. People have to expel, that's a good word, I guess, their poison, no, I hate to use the word poison, but that venom is another good word. That anger, which is venom, out, and I don't mind being the one that they put it on, and so I've got broad shoulders, and so anyway, those are some of the things. Most of my clients are very, receptive to working, softly and nice music, and it's usually a very, very pleasant, happy experience for all of us. And so I'm very grateful for the career I've chosen, all the way from when I was 11 years old, developing film in a darkroom as a proper Boy Scout, all the way up to now with these heavy hitter subjects that I get in. It's a long way, so one never knows what you're doing. So I admire I advise a lot of young people get into a creative field, because it's amazing with satisfaction that you can get when you do something creative. I used to build model airplanes, by the way, part of Boy Scouts, and you made it out of balsa wood, something called balsa wood. You have something called an X-Acto knife.
You still do. You cut things, but did it still to this day.
It was so neat, and the smell of that airplane glue.
Back in the good old days,
all over your fingers, and there used to be a rubber band inside. You turn the propeller. Creative stuff is all creative. How about even when you take it outside and you let this model airplane go in the air, and it's flying something you created flew. Now, I advise a lot of young people to do things that you can get the satisfaction of seeing things fly, maybe seeing things that you created on the internet, maybe seeing things on album covers and things like that. It's all possible, and it's all very exciting. And you can earn a good living with it, by the way.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much, Harry. This has been very informative. I think maybe this should be enough for today. Just to give people a quick introduction to my neighbor. There'll be much more coming. I mean, I want to know all about the crazy cameras he used. He would have these cameras with all these things attached to them, and they can be like this big with shades and radios, and how he got his clients and how he worked, and his studio and everything. But I think for today, maybe for this video, I think it'd be enough. Thank you very much for having me over. It's been a pleasure getting to meet you.
Yeah, it was really easy for this interview, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these. And I've got a lot of information I can give people out there.
Well, we all look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken.